Photography has helped me to heal in so many ways. Photography has given me that space to express the self in ways that I would not have been able to if I use another medium.
So we're at the mid-career survey of Zanele Muholi's work. Zanele Muholi's pronouns are they, them, their. Muholi's a visual activist from South Africa. They really came to photography through activism. Their very early activist work included founding the Forum for Empowerment of Women, which was an organisation, a kind of safe space for Black lesbian women. They mobilised in many ways which sought to really highlight the sharply increasing instance of hate crimes felt by the LGBTQIA community in South Africa. So it's really within this context that Muholi makes this very first body of work, Only Half the Picture, which focuses on these hate crime survivors. And they do so in this really beautiful way that protects the dignity, privacy of their participants by showing kind of fragmented views of the body. So alongside the more hard-hitting portraits of participants, hate crime survivors, are these beautiful, lovely moments of intimacy and queer desire. So we see that sense of intimacy within this cluster on the wall, which actually includes a lot of self-portraits of Muholi themselves. This is their story, their attempt to make visible their own experience.
Talking about photography specifically and the need to capture images of ourselves or of our lives in space at this particular period is not necessarily about beauty per se, but it's about the need of documenting realities of people who deserve to be heard, who deserve to be seen, and whose lives are often excluded as part of the canon. In my world, every human is beautiful. It's the kindness and what comes from within that is beautiful. It's not the outer layer or the physical image that is projected to us.
If we move then to the vitrines that are in the centre of the room, and they really kind of demarcate the two first spaces we have here at Tate Modern, we've collected that ephemera related to their early activist work. So again, that community-driven work they were involved in through the Forum for Empowerment of Women, the anti-hate crime campaigns they co-organised, and Muholi's compelling writing, which really draws together this extensive research they've undertaken into the particular set of circumstance that gave rise to this paradoxical situation, and that is, despite South Africa's most progressive constitution, and it's the first in the world to outlaw discrimination based on sexual orientation, the queer community, and in particular the Black lesbian community, are still targeted. They still, to a large extent, live in fear. One of the really interesting inclusions in these first room vitrines are the visitor response sheets, and they date from one of Muholi's very first presentations of Only Half the Picture, which was made alongside a conference on gender and visuality staged at the University of Western Cape in 2004. We see in the response that visitors have to this very first body of work a kind of hesitancy around the subject matter and the themes, particularly the themes of queer desire and queer intimacy. it's quite interesting to reflect back on, how important and new and daring this work really was. If there's reporting on black lesbians in South Africa in mainstream media, it's often to do with some kind of horrific hate crime. So Moholy's really trying to counter that by also telling the other side of the picture, which is one of love, playfulness, happiness, and trying to counter as well the idea that persists that same-sex relations are un-African, which is a complete fallacy. Really their whole practice has been trying to undo this fallacy, but particularly this section of the show, Being, which shows those really beautiful moments of real human love and tenderness.
It's mostly about skin. I wanted to say that sexuality and gender of a person is skin deep. It's not about the clothes that we wear, how you speak, how you walk, how you brag about yourself. The queer self is the heart, regardless of all the layers that we are wearing or that we wear. So there's a lot of skin in the project.
We are in room 3, titled Queering Public Space. Photographing Black LGBTQIA+ participants in public spaces is an important part of Moholy's visual activism. This room contains color portraits of transgender women, gay men, and gender non-conforming people in public spaces. By choosing to photograph participants in color, Moholy brings the work closer to reality and roots them in the present day.
Maybe about 15 years ago, there were not many queer photographers. Let me be specific, Black queer photographers. Now people have taken interest and they are documenting themselves. And also the change in place. There are more gay prides in space than 1990 when we had our first pride to now. People have moved to different parts of the country, and their understanding and level of thinking has changed. So I could say that there are quite a number of milestones that have been won by South Africa specifically, though I cannot say that everything is pure and glossy as how it may be projected sometimes.
This monumental color wallpaper in front of you is a group portrait of transgender women and gender non-conforming individuals. This particular beach in Durban, which was of course segregated under apartheid. So for them to occupy the space together with Moholy, they are queering a space. They're commenting back to the long history of segregation in a public space, which is an everyday practice of racial segregation in South Africa. They're critiquing the history, marking the space with their trans bodies, and making a new history of South Africa.
I like to call the people who are in my photographs not subjects but participants, because they partake in very, very important projects. And I think that to say they're subjects, we're divorcing ourselves from human to human kind of connection that's supposed to happen. And also it's a way in which I may like to undo the hierarchies that are attached to these people, where there's an important person and there's less important person. Brave Beauties, which is a series mainly of transgender women who are former beauty queens. And most of them I photograph in a swimming costume. They're at the sea, because I like to transfuse public spaces and just take the girls to the beach. We own the sea like everyone, because it belongs to everybody. This water is for you as well. Swim, enjoy yourself, and just be.
Queer beauty pageants offer a space of resistance within the Black LGBTQIA+ community in South Africa. They are a place where individuals can realize and express their beauty outside heteronormative and white supremacist cultures. Maholi has commented that these participants enter beauty pageants to change mindsets in the communities they live in, the same communities where they are most likely to be harassed or worse.
I have met with quite a number of people who might not be as beautiful to others as how they read or redefine beauty. So for me, beauty is simple. Sharing some kindness and have a conversation that builds us as two beings. Learning from each other is another presentation of a different kind of beauty that we don't often read about or that is given to us, if at all, So it's just kindness and being respectful, which do away with the outer layer, the inside that makes people, or that gives people hope.
It is very difficult to tell my side of the story.
My pronoun is she or her.
But you have those people that still don't understand me.
Going to school was like an everyday war.
Today I want to break it out. I don't want this woman in me to die crying.
Don't see my gender, just see me as a person.
Living in the township, people are really not familiar with the term transgender.
Try and find out more.
Change is good.
Transform. We were all born from love, and I think that's the one thing we tend to forget.
Once they have more knowledge about transgender people, it's very rare for them to discriminate that person.
People just need to live. Freedom, just live.
Patience shall prevail. Whatever they were trying to take from me, they failed.
So we're in room 5 of the exhibition now, which is dedicated to notions of collectivity. And Maholi has been working with a large group of collaborators for many years, many of whom are members of their collective Inkanyiso, which is a Zulu word meaning light. And so much of Maholi's practice is really rooted in training, collaborating, skill sharing, whether that be lending cameras or actually training younger people in the skills of photography. So Maholi does that in a way to really give participants, give their people the confidence to be the documenters of their own life and the archivers of their own history. and in that way ensures that erasure of these histories doesn't happen.
Photography, like videography, is super expensive, which I think it limits many people with beautiful stories and important narratives that could be conveyed with different audiences in various places. But due to the expensive hobby for some, but reality for others, difficult for them to carry on or to capture it. The issue that I'm trying to deal with now is to find a language that speaks to our bodies, ourselves, our minds, that is simplified, that will make even maybe an adult or a matured person to feel at home when confronted with such visuals, which then tend to be textual for other people who might not want to be confronted by text. We are at Tate. 95% of people who be seeing this world might be locals or speak different languages. But to say, in what language are these images produced? Where was the photographer? And who is your audience? So those are the things that I'm like dealing with every time I think of like visuals and my work. Only half the picture, brave beauties, faces and phases that turn all of these things into Zulu. I dream in Zulu. I'm responding to you in English, but deep down, I'm speaking my language.
This is really one of Maholi's most important bodies of work. It's an ongoing series and a living archive in which they document trans, lesbian and gender non-conforming individuals. Maholi's dedication to their participants is really manifest in this series because you see that they're returning to the same people over time and photographing them in what they call follow-ups. Within the hang, you see some participants repeated, and within the Tate presentation, we've grouped all of those repeated participants together so that you can really see how each person develops over time. It might just be aging, or it might be that they've changed their gender identification. The gaps in the grid also indicate those participants that might no longer be present, and that might be that they are no longer affiliated with the project, or they might now identify in a different way. It can also indicate a portrait yet to be taken, just to kind of really reinforce that this is a living archive.
Some people in the series are traditional healers. They possess so many powers or powerful senses within themselves. But how often do we talk about that transition, which is dual, where transitioning in true sense, as in like transitioning from one gender to the next, and transitioning in true sense as in like your spirituality and how when all those processes are happening and it's like moving from person to person and it goes beyond and it's deeper and it's hard for one to explain. But I think that the transitioning has a lot to do with spirituality in a way because of the power and forces that are attached to those two. Spirituality will always be part of us in one way or the other.
Now we are in the room number 7, where we are looking at actually color testimonial by 8 queer individuals, giving participants a platform to tell their own story in their own words.
Gender identity to me means everything because from the early age, I identified myself as a man or as a boy. Little did I know that I wasn't really a boy. I thought I was a boy. I remember this incident when all my friends, especially when we were kids playing in the streets, and all of them, they took out their private parts and they were peeing. And then I looked at my private parts and it was different from them. Then from then, all the time, I was puzzled. And all the time when I went to sleep, I would pray about it and ask God to actually make my private part normal like any other boy, which didn't happen. And then I went through a process during my teenage years where that's where I started understanding the fact that I was not a boy. And it hit me hard, especially when I was in my periods. I think that's when the curtains were closed. And that's when I was like, wow. But I'm a boy. But my physical appearance doesn't feel like a boy. So that's where my identity started to actually change the way I am. And from the longest time I've searched for my identity because at first I identified myself as a lesbian. And then over the course of years and through reading and through knowing people and attending workshops, I finally understood that no, I'm not really a lesbian. I'm a trans man because I've always felt like a man. It's just that I'm in a female body.
So let's walk into room 8, where we show ongoing work titled Somyama Gonyama, in which Muholi turns the camera on themselves to explore the politics of race and segregation. The images Muholi has made refer to personal reflections, colonial apartheid histories of exclusion, discrimination, and displacement, as well as ongoing racism. Muholi questions the act of violence and also harmful representation of Black bodies. Muholi's aim is to draw out these histories in order to educate people about them and to facilitate the processing of these traumas experienced both personally and collectively. In post-production, Muholi increases the contrast of the images, which has the effect of darkening their skin tone. By doing so, Muholi reclaims their blackness, which they feel is continuously performed by the privileged others.
One of the projects that I've focused on recently is titled Somnyama Ngonyama, in which I'm praising my ancestry and using self as a way to articulate own experiences, etc. I thought that it was very, very important for one to do so, because when we document and photograph other people or those around us, we tend to forget about ourselves. But I thought, I have photographed so many people, I have captured so many videos, and in a way it's painful. And having documented painful experiences of other people without dealing with my own pain, I needed to remember me. So I bring forth my mother's experience, who worked as a domestic worker for 42 years, which was painful because she never had much time to be with us. And I'm using materials or props or objects that connect with those realities, you know, like latex gloves, which is used when one is working, doormats, which then become nothing when one is stepping on that piece of something or object. And I use a lot of painful objects that maybe other people might not read them as they look at them immediately. But because I know what they mean, I use them. That picture to maybe someone looks beautiful or ugly, but to me, it means something because it's based on an experience that I have faced or went through.
One of the most personally compelling aspects of Maholi's work is the educational capacity of the show. In a moment of ever polarising politics and kind of radical swings to the right and to the left, is that, you know, one can come and learn, be inspired, and hopefully leave with a little bit of mutual understanding and respect for fellow individuals and fellow human beings. So one of the things we're really keen to do in this exhibition is to try and unpack what it means to be a visual activist, because Maholi defines as a visual activist, not an artist. So one of the ways we really wanted to do this was through looking at a timeline, because the idea of dates and history are really important to Maholi. So the timeline brings together these three strands of information. Firstly, it looks at South African history, then the emergence of queer activism, and finally, looking at Maholi's own personal history. The history of apartheid, of course, and post-apartheid is ever present in their work, whether it's in photographing participants on Durban Beach or in the Somnyama Ngonyama self-portraits, looking at these really painful histories of pencil testing or necklacing. So we were really, really keen to give the viewers at Tate Modern that history and insight into apartheid.
We were also really keen to spotlight the moments when queer activism really comes to the fore in South Africa, so in the years just preceding the first democratic elections in '94. And then as we progress through the timeline, we see books, posters, ephemera related both to Maholi's activism and the activism of their participants.
The photography has given me access to spaces that I would not have had if it wasn't for photography. So photography became that extra layer of the self that is comforting in a way. It's given me the opportunity to you and many other individuals. I am because of photography.